Welcome back to Counting to Five, a podcast about the United States Supreme Court. We're about to begin a series of episodes previewing cases on the court's docket for the upcoming term. But before we get to that, in this episode, we're going to step back and take a big picture look at how the 2017 term is shaping up so far. The first Monday in October each year marks the beginning of a new Supreme Court term. By convention, each term is named according to the month in which it starts. The just completed term is referred to as October Term 2016, or OT 2016 for short, and the term due to start in a little less than 2 months is October Term 2017, or OT 2017. This terminology can be a little confusing because the majority of cases each term are actually argued and decided in the following calendar year. For example, in OT 2016, the court heard oral arguments through late April 2017, and dozens of opinions were issued in June 2017. But that's the convention. Each term, the court hears oral argument for 2 weeks each month from October through April. Opinions are issued throughout the term as they're finished, but by tradition, the court issues all of the opinions for the term by the end of June and then goes into recess for the summer. But when does the court choose the cases it's going to hear each term? During the term, from October through June, the justices meet in private conference several times a month to consider cert petitions, the formal requests for the court to take a case. They accept a lucky few cases, but reject the vast majority. Newly granted cases are slotted into the court's oral argument calendar, and the court publicly issues an oral argument calendar a month at a time as the term progresses. Once the current term's argument calendar fills up, usually in January, any additional cases granted will be carried over for argument in the following term. By the time the court goes into recess at the end of June, it's often granted enough cases to fill up its fall argument calendar. This year, the number of granted cases is on the low side. As of the end of June, the court had granted only 28 cases for October Term 2017. Let's look at what this means for the court's argument calendar. Each oral argument week, the court normally hears cases from Monday through Wednesday. The court likes to hear 2 arguments a day, but it will sometimes hear only 1 if it doesn't have enough cases on its docket, or 3 when it's trying to squeeze extra cases in. In the 1970s and 80s, when the court routinely heard more than twice as many cases each term, it would regularly schedule 4 cases per argument day, but 2 a day has been the standard over the last 2 decades or so. With 7 months of arguments and 6 argument days per month, minus a few holidays, this usually works out to about 78 argument slots per year. This seems to be the court's target in recent years, but it sometimes comes up short. So this year, the court started the summer recess with 28 cases granted. The October session has only 5 argument days due to Columbus Day, and a few weeks ago, the court issued the October argument calendar, filling those days with 10 cases. The court has not yet released any later argument calendars, but the November and December sessions each have space for 12 cases. That means the remaining 18 granted cases are enough to fill up November and half of December. So what happens next? In a typical year, the next new case grants don't happen until the end of September. The justices will reconvene in advance of the new October term and hold what's known as the Long Conference, where they will rule on literally thousands of cert petitions that have accumulated through the summer. The vast majority will be denied, but the court may grant a dozen or so. But these cases granted after the Long Conference won't be ready for argument by the December session. Normally, under the Supreme Court's rules, the full briefing schedule, the time given to the parties to file legal briefs arguing their competing positions, takes about 3.5 months. 45 days for the petitioner's opening brief, 30 days for the respondent's opposition brief, and 30 days for the petitioner to reply. It's not unusual for the court to cut into this briefing time when it wants a case on its calendar sooner, but in order for cases granted at the end of September to be argued in the first week in December, the court would have to severely shorten the briefing schedule, which is not likely to do absent an emergency. So what does this mean? One possibility is that the November and December sessions will be light, consisting of only the 18 remaining granted cases, with a number of empty argument slots. This is the most likely scenario. The court has had a number of light argument sessions in recent years, but it's not the only possibility. Every year in June, the court races against the calendar to resolve all of the outstanding cases before its self-imposed end-of-term deadline. A few years ago, the court started taking some small steps toward alleviating this time pressure by front-loading its term, scheduling a 3rd case on some argument days in the fall. There was even a rumor that the court was planning to change its calendar to have a 3rd week of argument in October and only a single week in April, the last argument month of the term. But in the last few years, the court hasn't been granting cases fast enough to even fill the fall calendar, let alone pack it with extra cases. Last year, the court's argument calendar was decidedly backloaded. Like this year, the court started the term with a relatively low number of grants, and the first 5 months of oral argument were light. 2 sessions had only 7 cases where there was room on the calendar for 10 or 12. The court then loaded up its last 2 months of argument, possibly in part to avoid having an embarrassingly small caseload for the year. But one result of loading up the later sittings is that squeezing more cases into April leaves fewer cases carried over to the fall. So this year, the court once again doesn't look like it will fill its fall calendar. So what else could the court do? One possibility is that the court could attempt to fill out its fall schedule by granting some additional cases over the summer instead of waiting until the end of September. Although the court likes to stick with tradition and regularity, it has occasionally issued summer grants in the past. Whether the court would consider summer grants this year probably depends on how concerned the justices are about their dwindling docket, how motivated they are to avoid another backloaded term, and of course, how many promising potential cases they're actually seeing among the cert petitions. At the beginning of the summer, the court announced that it planned to issue summer orders on 3 days, July 17th, August 7th, and August 25th. The first 2 dates have passed, and the court issued only routine housekeeping orders. If the court does decide to fill out its December calendar with summer grants, August 25th seems like a good candidate. We'll just have to wait and see. Already, with less than half of the court's docket filled, it's shaping up to be a very interesting term, with cases about, among other things, President Trump's authority to issue the so-called travel ban executive order, whether there are judicially enforceable limits to gerrymandering for partisan political advantage, whether the government needs a warrant to seize voluminous cell phone location data records, and the intersection between anti-discrimination law and claims of free speech or religious exercise. In upcoming podcast episodes, we'll be previewing these and other cases. And that brings us to the end of episode 13. Links to resources related to this episode can be found in the show notes at countingto5.com. That's TO and the number 5. You can leave comments and questions on the show notes post at countingto5.com or on the Counting to 5 Facebook page, tweet at countingto5, or send an email to mike@countingto5.com. You can call and leave questions and comments on the Counting to 5 voicemail line at 774-226-8685. That's 774-2-COUNT-5. Please keep sending your feedback so we can bring you more of what you want going forward. Please subscribe to Counting to 5 to make sure you don't miss future episodes. And if Counting to 5 isn't available in your podcast app, directory, or service, please let us know and we'll do what we can to get it listed. Finally, please consider supporting us financially. Go to Counting to 5's Patreon page at patreon.com/countingto5, where you can make a monthly pledge in any amount as low as $1. Patrons have access to exclusive rewards, including special mini explainer episodes, live video chats, bonus audio content, and more. Thank you for listening. This has been Counting to 5.